Hello and welcome to this pattern recognition video. And today I'll have 10 puzzles featuring endgame tactics, which are always great to study. A lot of people neglect the endgame. If you're not familiar with pattern recognition, you basically solve a set of puzzles like these 10 today. And the idea is to go over them more than once. That way, it'll help you to better remember the tactics and the patterns that you see. If you just solve a puzzle once and then forget about it, you'll kind of forget a lot of what you saw. So let's take a look at these. Remember, you can pause at any time if you need to think longer before I give something away. So first thing you might want to do is look and see what the idea was behind your opponent's last move. So, and that's wise to do in any position. You ask what threat they might have, what they were trying to achieve, what changed in the position. Well, it looks like this bishop is moved here, and it looks obvious it's attacking a more powerful piece here. The bishop is attacking the rook. So, what can you do about that? An obvious move. Also, we have the king attacking this rook. Well, no, it's protected by his bishop here. So the obvious move, might be to just retreat this rook, move it somewhere. But maybe there's something better. Before you make a move, you want to look at all checks, captures, and threats in that order. So here, if we look at checks first, what checks do we have? Well, this rook could deliver a check, or this rook. Now, if we move this rook maybe to here, this pawn would no longer be defended, and the king could start just picking off the pawns. Well, maybe not that one because the rook is protecting it. So maybe the other rook, if the rook goes here, what could be done then? The king has an escape, so maybe there's something better. What about if we go here? Well, if we go here, we deliver check, and the king is very limited on what it can do. There's only one move possible. So the king would have to go here, and then what do we do after that? Well, hopefully you found the move where we push this pawn and deliver a checkmate. And often those pawn moves are easy to overlook. So we have a check, and they're not even going to play it out. The king can go where? Here. And then we deliver a mate with this pawn. So hopefully you got that one. On to puzzle number 2. What do we have here? It looks like a rook check forking the king and both of these pawns. So what would be best here? Well, we have to move the king. Remember, when you're in check, you have 3 options or less: capture the attacker, block, or run. So the king or no other piece can capture the checking rook. So we can't block with anything. We have to run. And we have, 3 options here, here, or here. But which one of those is best? Let's see. Kind of a tricky position here. I mean, we have to move the king, but what can we achieve after we move that king? So probably best, I'm thinking, would be to go ahead and attack the rook here or here. But the opponent is ahead in material, a rook for that bishop. So maybe we don't want to go here, or there could be a possibility of a check, and then material would be traded off, which you want to avoid that when you're behind in material, unless you're trying to trade pawns off. Okay, so probably the best move is to go there. And then what might our opponent do? Maybe pick this pawn off. Something like that, to leave him with isolated doubled pawns here. All right. I don't know. That's the move I think I'm going to go with. If I go here, he's probably going to take that. Um, then maybe we can attack the rook again. And that rook is very limited. Well, I guess it could swing across to the other side. Hmm. Let's see. I don't know. I think we're forced to go there. Okay, so they take that. And now what? If we attack that rook with the king, he can go off to the side. What have we accomplished here? Um, is there something I'm missing at this point? Hmm. Usually it's a good idea to move your king up the board. No. Okay. Huh. I don't see what I might be missing here. Hmm. Maybe there's some type of tactic where we try to go up here, here, and here. No. Wow. Oh, okay. We swing across to the other side and just immediately go there. Okay, because then we had a threat to go here. And if the rook captured, our pawn would capture and promote, protected by the bishop. So, now we just grab this extra material, I guess. And they do have this fork and then picking off that. But we have this extra bishop. Oh, also, they can't take time to do that because we're threatening a mate here. All right. Well, on to puzzle number 3. Hopefully you did better than I did on that last one. Sometimes these end games with not many pieces that look simple are trickier than you think. And the reason I'm doing another endgame puzzle video, I had a comment from a viewer that mentioned they like these. So let me know if there's something specific you want to see in future puzzle videos. All right, let's see if there's a specific tactic. Okay, so the pawn looks like it captured something. We have a runaway pawn. How do we deal with that? Well, I think we have to move our king forward. We have to go there to help escort our pawns forward. The opponent would go there and be one move away from promoting with a check on our king. So if we go there, they push their pawn. We would then have this check. And the king would have to run after that, and he would be in trouble either way. So let's take a look at it. We go there. We deliver that check. Now, oh, we have to be careful here. If we just push with the check immediately, we have a check here. Or sorry, the king would take. Let's take another closer look at this. All right. So if we go there, the king has to capture this pawn. And now we can't promote our pawn until we move here. Oh, maybe that works because if they promote, yeah, we'll checkmate. All right, we can do that immediately. It does work. So we go there. Now we promote. And, of course, if they promote, well, then we move here and checkmate. So the opponent has to move their king, and that'll give us time to swing down here and prevent their pawn from promoting. All right, hopefully you found that. And I have the rating set at 1,500 to 2,000 today. So, if you're below that rating, you can still try these and see how you do. If this is too easy, let me know if you want some more difficult puzzles. All right, on to puzzle number 4. What do we have here? King attacking the knight. But that knight is trying to prevent this pawn from moving forward here. And as soon as our king moves out of the way, it would take one move, to get out of the way. Maybe we put the king up here or down here, and then 2 moves. So 3 moves to promote there. Is that enough, though, if we ignore this attack? So if we move our king, let's check that out. We move there. He grabs our knight. We push our pawn. He pushes his. We promote. Then he would be able to promote. Okay. So maybe we move with a check. Something like that. The king would probably go here. That way, if we try to go there, to stop the pawn from moving forward, he could just take our knight. So, check. Is there something better? Oh, what if we tried this? Does this work? What if we block and the king just takes? Now it's going to take him 1 move to get out of the way and 2 to promote. The same with us. So if we go there to block, he takes. We move out of the way. He moves out of the way. He would probably move here to be out of the line of fire when we promote. So we push. He pushes. I don't know if that works. So I don't know. I'm looking at this check again. If we go there and the king tries to move up here, what if we move out of the way now? Wow, okay, there's a lot to think about here. This is way more complicated than it looks. All right, to keep the video moving, I'm just going to try one of these moves. I'm thinking we go here. If the king goes after that, well, what if we just go there? Then he's 2 moves. Well, he can't. He has to go after the knight. So the king, ends up here capturing the knight. We push forward. He pushes forward. We promote and then he promotes. So maybe we go here. If he attacks, well, we could just go right back where we were. But so would he. Okay, but if we go there, he attacks our knight. All right, I'm just going to try this move. Okay, that's what they wanted, really? Huh. Okay, well now that they've done that, we can just go here and give up our knight if we have to. Because once we do that, and he takes, we just promote our queen. All right. Well, I don't know if that was the best try by white, but on to puzzle number 5. What do we have here? The pawn is pushing forward. So in an endgame with pawns like this, it's usually a great plan to push your pawn majority, especially the unopposed pawns that don't have pawns in front of them, because they can start marching down the board. Maybe one goes here, here, and then that one pushes forward. If they take, the other one can take and then, go on to promote. So also it's a race here. We have to ask ourselves, how many moves will it take for us to promote? And one problem I see is in 4 moves, they'll promote with a check to our king. So that could be a problem because it's going to take us 1 and then 4 more, so 5 moves. So maybe we need to get our king down here towards these pawns to try and stop them. So if we go there, down towards these pawns, if the king just, also moves in this direction and we push forward, the king will be able to get into the square of our pawn and stop it. Huh. Okay, so maybe we move this pawn first. They move theirs. We go here. Now we're in the square of the pawn. All right, that's what I'm going to try. We go there. Now we move our king. And if you're not familiar, any beginners that are watching this, if you're not familiar with the square of the pawn, if you have a pawn that's trying to promote, you draw a diagonal line to the edge of the board where it's traveling to, and then you just make a square here. And if the king can get into that square by going here, it'll be able to stop the pawn. Unless there's something blocking its path, sometimes that's an exception. All right. So I think we can just go after that pawn. Okay, now we can push this forward and the opponent cannot stop our pawn, but we can stop theirs by going here. All right, so now the square of the pawn here, even if the king moves up, it doesn't make it into that square, so this pawn will promote. All right, we're halfway done. That was rated 1973. So, if you're enjoying these puzzle videos, I usually do 2 in a row, but tomorrow I'm going to do another video. I started playing in over-the-board tournaments again, trying to, knock the rust off and get back into things. And I hadn't realized it had been 3 years since I played an over-the-board chess tournament. So I played in one on the 15th of November. This is 2025. And then I played a week later in a tournament at the same place. And so I have those first 3 games on videos. I think tomorrow one of those is coming out. Oh, sorry. This video will be after that one. So by the time you see this, yesterday's video will be the one with the final tournament game. And then I'll have the second tournament I played in. I'm going to show those games, which are kind of interesting. All right, back to the puzzles here. Sorry to hold you up. All right, if you're trying to get through these. Okay, we have a king retreating. It looks like we can just step forward with our king here and cover these squares, grabbing the opposition. And the one thing we're going to have to worry about is this pawn in our way. So if we go there, it grabs the opposition. The king can swing over to the side. But then, wow, this makes things a lot more tricky with that pawn. I mean, what happens if we just push one of these pawns? Well, he could take, we take, and then he goes here. He gets in front of the pawn. It should be a draw. So I'm thinking we have to go there. The king will step to the left or the right probably. Because normally, if we grab the opposition by going here and the king has to move to the side, we could go here, and try and control the queening square. But the problem is this pawn is blocking everything. I mean, maybe if we go there, let's say he goes there. What if we push this pawn next? That doesn't work. So we go there, there. Why doesn't it work? Because if he just takes, oh, maybe we push the pawn in front of him. Huh. Wow. This is just one more example of how pawn endgames can be way trickier than you think. So the general rule of advice is don't go into a pawn endgame unless you're sure that you're going to be able to get at least a draw or the win. Try to leave at least one piece or more that you can use to help your pawns. And then you won't have such a limited option for moves. So I don't know. I'm thinking that's the best move. And then we'll just have to see what the opponent does. Okay. So maybe we sacrifice this pawn. Oh, okay. Yeah, because if he takes this, then we still have the opposition. And then if he moves to try and get back in front of our pawn, we move and we just keep the opposition until we can. Okay, well, I'll show you how it works here. So now we have the opposition. We grab the opposition again. And for any beginners, if you're not sure or not familiar with opposition, you want to move where there's you move here and you'll have one square in between the kings. And the option for your opponent is to either back up or move to the side. Now that we're in front of this pawn, if he moves to either side, let's say he goes here, we'll be able to gain ground and get closer to the queening square. If he tries to back up to here, well, we can just grab the opposition again and then press forward some more and, eventually escort our pawn up the board. All right, on to puzzle number 7. So the pawn is pushed forward. So, yeah, that's not good. We have a runaway pawn. It's going to promote in 4 moves. It'll take us 4 moves. So they'll promote first, but we will be able to promote with a check, and that's going to make all the difference. So, actually, we promote first. Sorry. So we're going to promote first in 4 moves. They could promote they can't even promote because by the time they get here, they'll be in check. So, oh, what did I miss here? Okay, well, that is interesting. Huh. Wow, what is the issue here? I would think that we just go there. Okay, they could push either pawn. Okay, let's say they go there. We push here. They push. We push. Oh, I guess their king. What if it tries to move across the board? So maybe we need to do that first. Okay. Because otherwise their king could step over here and gain the opposition and try to move towards the pawn and stop it from promoting. So we have to go there. So my mistake. Now we'll still be able to promote with a check here. So check. And the problem is the king can only go here. We check again. He moves here, and then we can move there with checkmate. All right. Wow. Okay, that was pretty instructive. Hopefully you caught that, even though I did not. So let's move on to puzzle number 8. And that one was rated 1971. So on to puzzle number 8. What do we have here? Okay, the king is stepping forward to get in front of the passed pawn, to stop that. What was another option? Maybe moving the rook up to stop it, but this rook is doing a decent job of preventing the king from getting into the action here. But, maybe we push the other pawn and we have a runaway pawn on the other side. Can our opponent deal with 2 threats like that? I'm thinking that's probably what we need to do. The question is, if we go there, what if... Oh, there's also this check. Does that do anything? We could just step over to the side. All right, I still think that's the best move. We push that pawn. If they check our king, here we can just step behind the pawn. So once we push that pawn, the king, I don't know, he probably has to drop back with his rook. So let's try this. Okay, so after this check, what do we do then? Well, if we go here, he could move over, threaten to take our knight. So now what? Do we just move back over and defend? Then he checks us back and forth. Do we have some kind of crazy fork available? Okay, can we run with the other pawn? If we go there and he takes with a check, we could go there, attacking the rook, and the king can't stop both the pawns, and the rook will not be able to stop the other pawn. So I think that's what we have to do. So now, even if he captures and we move here, we're attacking the rook and we're preventing the rook from moving over here, getting behind the passed pawn. And that pawn is ready to promote on the next move as well. All right, on to puzzle number 9. What do we have here? Another runaway pawn trying to push forward, and that's a common theme in the endgame. So, now normally you want to look at the opponent's move and see what the purpose is, what's changed in the position, and of course he's just trying to promote with a check here. So now we want to look at checks, captures, and threats in that order. You could look at the material count, but we're ahead with that rook, but that's a very dangerous pawn. So an obvious move would be to just go here. And stop the pawn. But maybe there's something better. You always want to look at checks first. What if we go there? If we do that, he'll have to move. Maybe he'll move here to protect his pawn, because next this will fall and will be behind the passed pawn. So he'll probably move here to go guard the promotion square, but then we can move there and we have it covered. So that looks to be the way to go. Well, now we can just take the bishop and then grab the pawn next. All right. Well, and remember, these the rating on here, it's the level that the player was that made the winning move, I'm assuming. These are from chess.com. So that was the 1818 rated player who probably made that winning attack. On to the final puzzle, number 10. What do we have here? The king, I think it captured a pawn there. So what was the purpose of that move? Just to grab material. What changed in the position? Well, there is a possibility of pinning this rook to the king. And also there's a threat of a mate here. No, I guess not, because then we would just take that rook, of course. But this is an obvious move. If we go there, we're pinning. But even if we take that, we're behind in material. Our opponent has 2 extra pawns, even after that exchange of the bishop for the rook. Oh, maybe we can go there. What will they do? If he tries to go there, we can capture the checking rook. All right. I don't know. I think that's the most obvious move. I mean, maybe there's some kind of threat where we go there. I mean, you should look at checks first. Do we even have any checks? We have this rook sacrifice. So, is there anything where we go here, pinning the rook? We would have to bring in another piece before we would try, something like this, forcing the king to take, and then we could capture with the bishop, and then if they capture, we grab the other rook. But I think we have to play this move first, because it prevents, well, no, I guess we could still just grab that. But I don't know that. Oh, okay. We have another way to go. This is why you should definitely look at all the checks first. So what if we do that? Remember, when a king is in check, the 3 options are capture, block, or run. If we go here, checking the king, he can't block that, can't capture, he can only run forward. Then we deliver a checkmate here. Okay, yeah, so hopefully you found that way faster than I did. I was all focused on that pin, but in the system, you definitely want to look at checks first. All of them, even ones that don't look so good at first, but I definitely should have found that one sooner. All right, well, feel free to leave comments, especially if you have any requests, if there's something you want to see specifically in the future, a certain tactic in future puzzle videos. Also, stay tuned for some of these chess tournament game reviews. I have 2 of those coming up, so tomorrow I will have the first game I played in that tournament, which was, both the games were interesting, so you can check those out. But like I said, feel free to leave comments, like, and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.